What's the worst coworker you've ever worked with? Hired a cook on a good recommendation. He was just fine the first 2 weeks. Then I noticed food going missing. Then supplies started going missing. Then a customer told me that he had been adding auto 30% tips his food purchases. When I looked at the books, I saw that he had been adding 30% tips to all the credit card sales. And the cash rings were off from what should have been sold. I fired him that day. The next day he came in and apologized. Said he was on drugs and was going to rehab. I wished him well. Then next day he tried to break in after close and was caught. Idiot. Me reading your comment, _greater than I hired a cook. Asterisko, this is going to be about drugs, asterisk. As a former cook and dishwasher, it could have also been about assault with a deadly weapon while on the clock. Constant sexual assault, harassment, stalking the underage hostess, cussing out customers constantly, dropping ice in the deep fryer, constantly throwing knives and screaming hot pans at the dishwasher, bringing illegal firearms to work, stealing from coworkers, etc. God damn FNG. He just wouldn't work. Just wouldn't. This was in a research lab. He was a visiting researcher from another country, and he spent a lot of time asking tons of non-work related questions, to the point of disrupting others' work. In the course of a year, he designed one very basic experiment, and didn't actually do it. Just designed it. He was above doing bench work apparently. He picked fights with everyone doing any experiment related to the one he was planning, because he didn't want to have to share credit for anyone. He wouldn't clean up after himself, wouldn't pick up things from the floor. He actually called me in from another room because he wouldn't take a stringless tea bag out of his mug. Also on a different occasion, because he'd knocked some things off a hanger on the back of the door and for whatever reason, wouldn't pick them up. It was kind of like working with a child. He must have had servants where he lived. I don't know how, but he was there for his PhD. Boss fired. Hi monsieur, he was one of 2 people in her 30-plus year career that she'd ever fired. Edit. 90 messages. Whoa. In the interest of not reinforcing any stereotypes, I won't name the country. Such a person could come from many, and I dare say, any country honestly. Greater than I don't know how, but he was there for his PhD. Bribery. He wouldn't do bench work during his PhD? Very strange, given the work is what leads to the discovery. I worked with a guy who'd interrupt any conversation to talk about anything as if he was the expert. And I don't use anything as a hyperbole. He truly had something to say about anything, including things he had never heard of or obviously didn't know much about. When the subject being discussed was something in the category of things he didn't know much about, he would slowly steer the conversation away from the original discussion to something he would like to talk about at the moment. It was both amazing and the most annoying thing I had ever had to deal with. He was like that Wikipedia game where you start with Star Wars and somehow end up on LGBTQ+ struggles. Not to mention that conversation was basically 98% of him just talking non-stop. Everybody else was way too polite and against conflict to say anything, including me. So most people just tried to stay away from him. But he'd follow people around. I eventually left, but I even remember having a nightmare where he was the best man at my wedding. What was your cabinet position? This could apply to multiple countries sadly. This guy named Daniel I used to work with at McDonald's in high school. He let everyone know he worked out and enjoyed being on the football team. Monsieur, he had this thing about taking 5 shits a day. He would walk by on his way back from the toilet, chest out, shoulders back, and triumphantly announce, "That's shit number 3. Quote, ... Fucking Daniel. 5 shits a day, keep the doctor away. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger." This is about 15 years ago, but the office I worked in instituted a scent-free policy. One woman, who was already insufferable, was so offended by it that she snuck in her perfume collection. She'd walk down the halls and spray perfume into empty offices or cubicles when no one was looking, or before everyone arrived in the morning. This went on for well over a month or two, and we had no idea who was responsible. My coworkers and I started referring to this mysterious person as the Chanel Bandit. She was finally caught on camera in the act. She'd left for 3 weeks vacation and was unaware that we had installed cameras after a break-in. Some of us already suspected her, as the Chanel Bandit mysteriously stopped spraying while she was away. She quit right after she was caught. None of us were sad to see that cedar-scented psycho leave. Greater than cedar-scented psycho. Alliteration with words that start with different letters. I love English. Edit. You don't realize how large Reddit actually is until a comment reached 2K plus upvotes in an hour. I had a manager once who dumped trash on my desk my third day there. She said it was to remind me that taking out the trash was part of my job description. It wasn't. I was a research assistant at a mortgage firm. Whoa. Had this same situation. We had a full maintenance crew, but my department had previously helped with parking lot trash until our hours were cut, which was discussed and mandated from corporate. The top guy for our location came in extra early, picked up the parking lot trash, and dumped it on my desk. Then he berated all of the managers in front of everyone for my department. Just the tip of the iceberg when it came that asshole, though. He creeped the fuck out of all the girls at work, and then it came out he has stalking and sexual assault charges pending outside work. Fired that day. I had a guy at work make a bunch of gross comments in a full break room. Monsieur, my husband was sitting in the break room waiting for me. Heard all of it. I walked right into HR and listed the 30-some people in this normally really quiet lunchroom. Monsieur, that dude was so gross. My worst coworker was one I worked with when I was a cashier at Walmart. She approached me and asked me to cash out her paycheck. I was still new at the job and never got training on how to do that function. She was sympathetic, so she walked me through how to do it. Transaction over and done. I go on about my day. I get called back a couple of days later by my managers, and they circled me in an office and accused me of stealing. After tears, videotapes, and telling them what happened, they told me that apparently this coworker of mine had stolen not only from me, but several other people that day as well. They just wanted to confirm I wasn't in on the deal. Fuck Walmart, and fuck that bitch for almost getting me arrested. I was a Walmart cashier, and some young adults. I checked them out. They came back, and said I shorted them $20. I said I don't think I did. My drawers were always balanced. To the penny. They insisted I shortchanged them $20. Giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because, shit, I've been shortchanged before. And maybe I really did. I'm not impervious to mistakes. So I called my CSM over, described the situation, and said I'd like to drop my drawer and have her count it. Now the young adults are all, it's no big deal. We don't want to be any trouble or waste any time. And of course you know the ending. Those two guys were working a con on me. Or trying to. CSM counted my drawer, and it balanced to the penny. The conman left, and my CSM said I did the right thing. I was right. I didn't shortchange those bastards. Your story about the girl conning you with cashing the check reminded me of those dudes trying to con me. Sorry she got the best of you. Man, it sucks that they tried to scam you. But it makes me happy that you were completely willing to have your manager count the drawer. I was once shortchanged at a cheap-ass buffet when I was in high school, and wasn't even upset about it. It was a $5 buffet. I paid with a $20. Cashier handed me $5 change. I paused for a second, because I thought maybe I had been mistaken, but then felt sure I hadn't even had a $10. Again, not even upset. Brain farts happen. And I said, oh, didn't I give you a 20? No, you gave me a 10. The cashier spat immediately. I was a bit taken aback by the shit attitude of the cashier and just said okay and walked away. Manager came to our table while we were eating and apologized, handing me a 10. Bitch. My girlfriend had the opposite happen to her one time at GameStop. She bought a $10 Nintendo card, and paid with it $20, and asked for a few singles with the change. The cashier said, "You mean like a 10, a 5, and 5 ones?" She said yes. So the cashier sold her the Nintendo card, and gave her $20 in change. A $10 bill, a $5 bill, and 5 $1 bills. We didn't realize what the cashier did until it was far too late to rectify. I paid for some smokes with 100 and some snacks. So back then the total was less than $15. The very young cashier counted my change out to $80. Then hesitated, then counted out 2 more 20s and the $6 or $7 of small bills on top of that. I had to walk a very confused young man through the math and make him take the $40 back. I still don't think he fully understood what I was saying. A free $40 would have been nice, but it was obviously the kid's first job and I don't roll that way. Anyway, didn't want the poor guy getting screamed at when his till came up short. No contest, it was the literal crackhead I worked with for 4 months that was also secretly living in the office and being completely nonsensical when he was actually working. We found a mattress folded up in the warehouse after he was let go and an actual brand new crack pipe, with a price tag on it, to boot, squirreled away back there. He and his family, not just him living in the office, left discarded food everywhere like pizza crusts in the toilet brush holder in the bathroom. What even? And they left hair in the sink in the bathroom as they were obviously bathing in there, too, as we had no actual bathing facilities in the office. One day during his tenure, he sent an email saying his alarm didn't go off and he'd be in at X time, which kept getting moved back later and later. He eventually showed up at 4:40 p.m. and we closed at 5 p.m. Lol. See comment above about secretly living in the office. There's so much more I could go into. It was a wild 4 months. That's for sure. OMG, you worked with Creed. My coworker likes to initiate conversations, then does long pauses where you go to say something back. Then he cuts you off and keeps talking. He has entire conversations almost entirely by himself. He also likes to make changes to my paperwork before it's turned in. Ends up riddled with spelling mistakes while he tries to make the content look smarter. Fortunately, it's all electronically stamped with who made revisions. My boyfriend does that weird conversation thing. Sometimes I just try to talk over "Hi monsieur," sometimes I leave the room "Monsieur," he still doesn't know what I'm talking about. When I bring it up, my current suspicion is he's formulating the next sentence during that pause. Either way, it drives his mom and I insane. I worked at a grocery store and one of the scheduling ladies was a total C-bomb. When you work at a grocery store, you expect to have shifts all over the place. That's part of the job, so I'm not complaining about that. Just about 2 years into working there, I had an accident and broke my hand. Not while at work, unfortunately, lol. And needed surgery. I went to apply for employment insurance. And they required a record of employment. So I asked the woman in charge of that, the aforementioned scheduling lady, if she would mind sending that off so I could still pay rent while I was off work recovering. By the way, she told me she already had. So I go back to the A offices and they told me they still had no row, so I go back to my old work and ask her a second time. This happens until I asked her to do it 4 times. This resulted in me having to borrow money from my parents for Christmas in order to pay my rent. FYI, they broke the law. They have 10 days to provide it and 0 excuses. That's something you don't ask for twice. There's a decent fine for fucking around with an bro. So when this happens, are you supposed to file a complaint with HR, or what is the proper way to handle it? For that kind of dispute, probably best to go to the state labor board. HR is there to protect the company interest, not yours. Something here to reiterate, hashtag HRPROTECTSTHECOMPANY, not you. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.